Courageous Compassion has just come out. Here it is. And the cover has green tara. Yeah. It's from a tanka that Dharma Friendship Foundation gave me many, many years ago with the 21 taras. And I think that the image of Tara on the cover of a book called Courageous Compassion is very appropriate, because when I look at Tara, what I see is somebody who never gets discouraged. Yeah, I mean, she's smiling, she's in this dancing gait, she's ready to get up, she's full of energy, she's green and glowing, and you can't be depressed, you know, when your body looks like that and you are in that kind of position and so on. And so I think one of the big things for bodhisattvas is that they have overcome the thing of personal distress, because they've overcome the self-centered thought. And falling into personal distress, whether it's because we're concerned with one other person, or we're full of despair for the state of the world, or we're depressed for some other reason, that totally it's such a huge hindrance to Dharma practice. Yeah, our mind won't let us practice when we're full of depression and despair. And so Tara is just, she's always up, and doesn't let her mood get down. And I think in these days, in our crazy world, this ability is absolutely essential, especially with COVID going around. But even without COVID, the last 4 years of with the government was enough to, make you want to overcome depression and despair. So, uh, that's really important. And then being compassionate, we have to have courage. That compassion doesn't mean being a wimp. And so you have to have very strong self-confidence, His Holiness says, to really act with compassion and to be a bodhisattva. So bodhisattvahood isn't just people pleasing and, yeah, hi, I'm such a nice person. It's, going out and doing what needs to be done to benefit other sentient beings without worrying about yourself. That doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves. We have to if we're going to benefit others, but we don't worry about ourselves. So there's a difference between taking care of ourselves and worrying about ourselves. Yeah, worrying doesn't help us at all. It drains our energy. Yeah, anxiety just, makes us totally flat. So that doesn't help us take care of ourselves. So we need courageous compassion. So this book is telling us how to do it. So it follows on volume 5, which was in praise of great compassion. And that tells us all the different ways to cultivate love and compassion, joy and equanimity and bodhicitta. And if we practice that book, we're good to go for generating compassion and bodhicitta. Then, having generated them, the question is, then what do we do? It isn't like you just sit on your meditation cushion and say, now I'm working for the benefit of all sentient beings, as you twiddle your thumbs, okay, and drink your tea. No, you go out and do things. And so courageous compassion is talking about what we go out and do, okay? So it talks about the 10 paramitas. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, I thought there were 6. Well, their first was 10, and then it was condensed into 6. Okay, expanding it back into 10 is really gives us a different perspective, I think. Okay, so the 6, as you know, um, generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, meditative stability, and wisdom. And then we add on to that, okay, add 4 more perfections, which are usually condensed into the perfection of wisdom. So those are the perfection of skillful means, perfection of unshakable resolve, the perfection of power, and the perfection of pristine wisdom. Okay, so all of those are found in Chandrakirti's supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way. And so they're explained here in this text too. Then the text also talks about the 4 ways of assembling disciples. That's what it's called in the Tibetan tradition. In the Pali tradition, they have the same 4, and it's called the 4 ways of sustaining favorable relationships. Okay. In the Chinese tradition, they have the 4 too, and it's called all embracing bodhisattva virtues. Okay, so it gives you the different names give you kind of a different perspective. They're more or less the same, but they are explained slightly differently in some ways too. What another point I really like in this book is there's a whole long chapter that was based on uh, the uh, the conference between Western Buddhist teachers and His Holiness the Dalai Lama that happened way back in 1993. That was a really big turning point, at least for me personally, it was. And His Holiness also gave so much incredible, wise advice about how to bring the Dharma to the West and how to teach Westerners and how to, if we're in that position of being a teacher, how to practice, how to teach, how to think of ourselves, you know. And he explained how to do that, and he also talked about areas to be very cautious about, where it's easy to trip up. Then the book talks about the 10 paramis. That's Pali for paramita. You're going to go, what? The Pali tradition has paramitas? Yes, it does. It has 10. And many of them have the same names and descriptions as the one in the Sanskrit tradition. Others have different names, but the meanings very often overlap with the meanings found in the Sanskrit tradition. So in the Pali tradition, okay, here's how they're listed, and the ones that are similar they're still in a different order. It starts out with generosity, then ethical conduct. The third one in the Pali tradition is renunciation, then wisdom, then joyous effort, then fortitude, followed by truthfulness, determination, love, and finally, equanimity. Yeah. And so all of these are explained because there was a treatise written around 500 or 600 AD by Acharya Dhammapala, one of the Pali sages. And Bhikkhu Bodhi told me that there's parts from this treatise that are taken out from Asanga's Bodhisattva Bhumi. I haven't been able to figure out which parts were taken out and which were added by Dhammapala, but it seems like the pandits of both traditions shared material back then. Asanga lived before Dhammapala, but it's interesting that Dhammapala wrote a whole treatise about the paramis. Okay, so that kind of forms the first part of the book. The second part of the book, we go into the three vehicles and their fruits. Okay, so this is what is often called in the Sanskrit tradition the paths and grounds teachings. So it's given from the perspective of the Pali tradition, how people develop as stream enters, once returners, non-returners, and arhats. And it talks a little bit about the bodhisattva path in the Pali tradition because Acharya Dharmapala also set that out in his treatise. And then it goes into the paths and grounds according to the Sanskrit tradition, which in the Tibetan tradition is usually taught according to the Svatantrika system. Here, what I did is I found a salam, a grounds and path text, based on the Prasangika tradition. It was written by a Mongolian Lama that His Holiness often praises. So it's interesting to hear it given from that tradition because that's what we often hear when we're hearing the teachings of emptiness from the Prasangika view. So to have both the Prasangika both on the how to gain the realization of emptiness and how to progress on the grounds and paths is really nice. Yeah. And this also, in going into the bodhisattva grounds, okay, there's 10 bodhisattva grounds. And so there's some explanation about them also by Chandrakirti. But I also looked into the Chinese translation of the Dasabhumika Sutra, the Sutra on the 10 Grounds. So that sutra also is in the Tibetan tradition, but I couldn't find a translation of it that was real clear. The one in the Chinese tradition was done by a friend of mine, and it's really beautiful. And there's some parts when you read it and it's describing how the bodhisattvas practice. It just makes your mind go into some expanded, spacious place because you start to think, oh, this is what I have the potential to do and become. Yeah. And so then that fits together so well with courageous compassion, with Tara on the cover, whose mind is expanded and full of joy as she's practicing like this. So the book is out, and my next BBC, I will go through and I'll read some parts of it. Yeah. But it's a nice book. It's about 450 pages. So there's lots in here to digest and to practice.